Do make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I never planned on keeping secrets from my family, but the night of my graduation changed everything. While my cousins toasted champagne and my parents snapped photos, I slipped away with a folder so heavy it might as well have been chained to my wrist. Inside were the documents that proved my grandparents' entire $1 million estate was left to me. Not to my father. Not to my uncles. Not divided among the greedy swarm of relatives who were already circling like vultures before my grandparents were even buried. No, just me. And I knew what would happen if they ever found out. That's why, before anyone could suspect a thing, I quietly moved everything, the land, the bank accounts, the stocks, into a trust so well hidden, even my own parents wouldn't be able to touch it. I wasn't trying to be selfish. I was trying to survive. Because behind the estate wasn't just money, it was a secret that could destroy us all. And the worst part? Someone had already figured out that I knew. It started with the envelope. No return address, no stamp, just slid under my apartment door the week after graduation. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind lawyers use. My heart thudded as I unfolded it and read the single line written in careful, deliberate handwriting. You think the trust will protect you. It won't. I froze, the walls of my tiny apartment closing in. Nobody should have known. I'd set everything up in silence, no phone calls, no emails, no trace. The lawyer I used swore confidentiality. So who? That was the first night I stopped sleeping. Because suddenly, inheriting my grandparents' fortune didn't feel like a blessing, it felt like a trap. And deep down, I already knew who wanted to spring it. It started with the envelope. No return address, no stamp, just slid under my apartment door the week after graduation. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind lawyers use. My heart thudded as I unfolded it and read the single line written in careful, deliberate handwriting. You think the trust will protect you. It won't. I froze, the walls of my tiny apartment closing in. Nobody should have known. I'd set everything up in silence, no phone calls, no emails, no trace. The lawyer I used swore confidentiality. So who? That was the first night I stopped sleeping. Because suddenly, inheriting my grandparents' fortune didn't feel like a blessing, it felt like a trap. I sat on the edge of my bed, replaying every detail of the last few weeks. Graduation day. The folder of estate papers. My father's stiff smile when he congratulated me. Aunt Meredith's lingering stare when I mentioned I had errands to run. My cousin Victor's bitter laugh when someone asked if he'd finally be moving out of his parents' house. Every single one of them had motives. And every single one of them believed the estate would eventually fall into their hands. But my grandparents chose me. That choice wasn't random. It was tied to something my grandmother whispered to me on her deathbed, words I haven't repeated to anyone. Not even my parents. And if that secret ever came out, it wouldn't just ruin the family's reputation. It could endanger lives. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, dragging me back into the present. A text lit the screen. Unknown number. Enjoy the trust while you can. Tick-tock. My breath caught in my throat. Whoever had slipped that letter under my door, they weren't just warning me. They were watching me. The invitation arrived 2 days later, handwritten by my mother, but it reeked of my father's insistence. Family dinner. No excuses. I almost didn't go. Every bone in my body screamed to stay hidden, to vanish before whoever was sending the threats decided to escalate. But not showing up would only raise suspicions. And if I'd learned anything from my grandparents, it was this: you can't fight shadows by hiding in them. The moment I stepped into my parents' house, the atmosphere felt wrong. My uncle's laughter was too loud, my aunt's smile too polished, and my cousin's greetings too stiff, like they were waiting for anything to crack open. We sat around the long oak table, the same one where my grandparents used to host holiday dinners. Their absence pressed down heavier than the chandelier light above us. Every face I looked at carried a question behind the polite small talk. Did she get it? Did she take what should have been ours? My father cleared his throat mid-meal, carving silence through the chatter. So, he said, setting down his glass, graduation. A proud moment. And your grandparents would have been delighted. His eyes locked on mine like a spotlight. I only hope you're handling their affairs responsibly. A fork slipped from my cousin Victor's hand, clattering against his plate. My Aunt Meredith jumped in quickly, too quickly. Oh, leave her be, Harold. She's young. What responsibility could she possibly have? But her gaze lingered on me, sharp and probing, as if daring me to flinch. I forced a smile, pretending not to feel the invisible crosshairs on my chest. I'm doing fine, I said softly, sipping water to steady my hand. That's when I felt it, a slip of paper pressed into my palm under the table. I froze, pulse hammering, before sliding it into my lap. My cousin Victor leaned back casually, smirking like nothing happened. When I unfolded the paper, 3 words scrawled in dark ink sent a chill rushing through me. We know everything. I looked up, but Victor was laughing at some joke, his face unreadable. Across the table, my father's stare hadn't left me. And suddenly, I wasn't sure who at that table was my family, and who was my enemy. I barely slept after that dinner. Every laugh, every glance, every word replayed in my head like a film reel stuck on loop. Who was behind the notes? Who had slipped that message into my hand? By morning, one thought wouldn't leave me alone: the lawyer. I had gone to him in good faith, desperate for discretion. He'd seemed professional, quiet, methodical, with that polished confidence lawyers wear like armor. He'd promised airtight confidentiality. But how else could my family know about the trust? Unless someone had tipped them off. I decided to test him. The next afternoon, I walked into his office, a small suite tucked above a row of antique shops downtown. The receptionist barely looked up as I signed in. My palms sweated as I rehearsed my questions. If he was involved, I'd have to catch him slipping. He greeted me with that same warm smile, but his eyes flickered when he saw me, just for a moment, like he hadn't expected me back so soon. Back so soon, Miss Carter? He asked smoothly, gesturing toward the leather chair across from his desk. I sat, forcing calm into my voice. I just wanted to confirm something. The trust, it's completely sealed, right? No one has access. No one knows except you and me. He nodded, but there was hesitation in the way his fingers tapped against a file. Of course. Confidentiality is our highest priority. Funny, I said, leaning forward, because someone slipped a note under my door. Someone who knew. The color drained from his face. For a fraction of a second, I saw it, the crack in the mask. His voice recovered quickly, too quickly. Miss Carter, I assure you, the information is secure. Perhaps you've misunderstood. I didn't believe him. When I left his office, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown text. Checking up on your friend. Careful. He's not the only one with secrets. My stomach dropped. Whoever this was, they were watching me in real time. And worse, they wanted me to know it. By the time night fell, I'd made up my mind I wasn't going to keep waiting for the next note, the next text, the next shadow behind me. Whoever was circling me, I was going to smoke them out. So I set a trap. I withdrew a small sum of money from one of the trust's accounts, just enough to look like a careless mistake. Then I left the receipt on my kitchen counter, angled perfectly for anyone sneaking into my apartment. If they were watching me as closely as I suspected, they'd pounce. I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, the only sound the steady tick of the clock, clutching the baseball bat I kept tucked under my bed. Hours crawled by. Midnight passed. Then 2 a.m. Then a sound. The faint click of my door. I held my breath, heart thundering. My apartment was pitch black, but I could see the outline of someone slipping inside. They moved confidently, like they knew the space, heading straight for the counter where the receipt waited. I rose slowly, bat in hand, every nerve in my body screaming. But before I could move, my phone buzzed against the table. The sound shattered the silence like gunfire. The intruder froze. I lunged forward, swinging the bat. They stumbled back, colliding with the table as the glow of the streetlight outside finally caught their face. I gasped. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a masked thief. It was my cousin Victor. He raised his hands defensively, but his expression wasn't guilt, it was panic. "You don't understand," he whispered hoarsely. "They made me do it." My grip on the bat loosened. "They? Who?" Before he could answer, my phone buzzed again. I glanced down. A new message lit the screen. "Told you he'd take the bait. But the real game hasn't even started." And that was when I realized I hadn't set the trap. I had walked right into theirs. Victor's chest rose and fell in quick, shallow bursts. His hands trembled in the dim glow of the streetlight bleeding through my blinds. For once, the smirk he always wore was gone, replaced by raw terror. "They've been watching all of us," he rasped, eyes darting toward the door like he expected someone to burst in. "Not just you. The trust, the estate, Grandma's will, it wasn't just family who wanted it. There's more." My stomach twisted. "More who? What are you talking about?" He shook his head violently. "I can't say their name. If I do," he stopped, choking on the words, like just thinking about it was dangerous. I stepped closer, lowering the bat but not my guard. "Victor, you broke into my apartment. You've been leaving me notes." His eyes widened. "No. That wasn't me. I swear. They made me slip you that message at dinner. They said if I didn't, his voice cracked. They'd ruin me. They already know about my debts, my gambling. They said they'd make me disappear the way they made." He cut himself off. "The way they made who disappear?" I demanded, my pulse spiking. He swallowed hard, sweat dripping down his temple. "Finally," he whispered, "Uncle Ray. He didn't have a heart attack." They silenced him. The room tilted. Uncle Ray, my grandparents' eldest son. Everyone said his sudden death last year was natural. But if Victor was telling the truth? Before I could respond, the apartment lights flickered. Then went out. Total darkness. Victor's breath hitched. I gripped the bat again, heart hammering so loud it drowned the silence. My phone lit up with another text, the glow casting our faces in pale blue light. "You should have listened. Now you both know too much." The screen went black again, plunging us into silence. And in that silence, I swore I heard footsteps inside the apartment that weren't ours. The darkness pressed in like a living thing. Victor's shallow breathing was ragged beside me, but it wasn't his breath that froze me in place. It was the other sound. The deliberate shuffle of footsteps. Slow. Careful. Inside my apartment. I clutched the bat tighter, forcing my eyes to adjust to the faint sliver of moonlight leaking through the blinds. My phone was dead black again, as if whoever sent that message had killed it remotely. Victor's whisper cracked the silence. "They're here." The footsteps stopped. A hush heavier than stone settled over us. My pulse pounded in my ears, so loud I worried they could hear it. I motioned to Victor, "Quiet, stay low," and we crouched behind the couch. The air smelled faintly of smoke, leather, something metallic. Not family. Whoever this was didn't belong in my world, or Victor's. Then, the sound of fabric brushing. A shadow moved against the wall. I swallowed hard and raised the bat. "Who are you?" I shouted into the dark, my voice trembling but sharp. Silence. Then a laugh. Low. Mocking. The kind of laugh that crawled under your skin and stayed there. "You don't even know what you're holding, little girl," the voice said, smooth and cold. "That trust isn't protection. It's a map. And you've just put yourself dead center." Victor stiffened. "Don't listen," he hissed. "They'll twist everything." But I wasn't just listening, I was trying to place the voice. It was masked, distorted somehow, but underneath, it felt familiar. Too familiar. The figure moved again, closer this time, a dark outline against my hallway. I swung the bat hard, striking the wall where they'd just been. The impact rang out, plaster cracking, but the intruder was already gone, slipping deeper into the shadows. Victor grabbed my arm. "We have to get out, now." But before we could move, a phone buzzed, not mine, not Victor's. From the intruder. And then, in that same chillingly calm voice, they said, "Bring her. Orders have changed." Victor's grip on my arm tightened. Too tight. I turned, breath catching, and saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not fear. Not panic. Obedience. Victor's grip on my arm tightened until my skin burned. His eyes darted toward the shadow in the hallway, then back to me. That flicker of obedience I'd seen there, God, it chilled me. "Victor," my voice cracked. "You know them? You've been working with them?" His jaw clenched. "I don't have a choice." The figure in the hallway chuckled, the sound slithering into my bones. "He's smarter than you give him credit for. He knows what happens when people cross us. Ask your uncle." My blood ran cold. "Uncle Ray." I jerked my arm, trying to pull free. "So this is it. You sell me out to save yourself." For a moment, just a moment, I saw the boy I used to play tag with in Grandma's backyard, the cousin who'd slipped me candy under the table at boring holiday dinners. His face cracked with guilt. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "If I don't hand you over, I'm dead." Rage surged hot in my chest. "Then maybe we fight together instead of rolling over." The figure took a step closer. I could see them now, half hidden under a hood, features still shadowed but posture confident, like they owned the room. "Enough," the intruder snapped. "Bring her." Victor swallowed hard. His grip tightened again, but his hand trembled. He wasn't just scared, he was torn. His eyes flicked from me to the shadow and back, as if both choices would kill him. And in that hesitation, I made mine. I drove my elbow into his ribs with everything I had. He gasped, stumbling back, releasing my arm. I swung the bat upward, the wood whistling through the air, connecting with something solid. The hooded figure grunted, staggering back into the dark. "Run!" I shouted, but I didn't wait to see if Victor followed. I bolted for the door, heart in my throat, fumbling with the lock. Behind me, footsteps thundered. Victor's, the intruder's, I couldn't tell. The door finally gave way, and I exploded into the night air. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I yanked it out mid-run, glancing at the screen. "Unknown number. Keep running, granddaughter. We already know where you'll go." And suddenly, I realized the trap wasn't in my apartment. It was out here. I didn't stop running until my lungs burned raw. The city was asleep, but every shadow felt alive, every corner a pair of eyes. I ducked into an alley, pressing against the cold brick, forcing myself to think. They knew where I'd go. That meant I couldn't go anywhere predictable. Not home. Not friends. Not even a hotel. I needed answers. And there was only one place I could get them, my grandparents' study. The estate had been sealed since their deaths, but I still had a key. My father hated that room, said it was full of ghosts. But I remembered the way Grandma used to slip in there late at night, closing the door, whispering on the phone. Grandpa always kept the desk locked, too, but not from me. He'd trusted me with the combination when I was 12, swearing me to silence. One day you'll understand why, little one. Now I finally did. I crept into the old house just before dawn, heart pounding as the floorboards creaked beneath my weight. Dust coated the air, heavy with memory. The study smelled of leather and old paper. The lock clicked open under my hand like it had been waiting. Inside the drawer wasn't just papers, there was a black ledger, thick, weathered, with my grandparents' initials embossed in faded gold. I flipped it open and froze. It wasn't a financial record. It was a list. Names. Dates. Transactions. Huge amounts of money transferred quietly over decades. Some names I recognized, politicians, businessmen, even a judge. Others were only initials, but I could feel the weight of their power dripping off the page. My phone buzzed again. A new message lit the screen. Now you see why the trust matters. That ledger is worth more than the money. And people will kill to bury it. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun, clutching the ledger to my chest. In the doorway stood Victor, his face pale, his hands raised. "You weren't supposed to find that," he whispered. "They said if you did, it's already too late." Victor's whisper hung in the stale air of the study. It's already too late. My grip on the ledger tightened until my knuckles burned. What do you mean too late? What is this, Victor? What did Grandma and Grandpa do? His face was ghostly in the half-light, torn between guilt and fear. You think they were saints? That estate, that money, it wasn't just from hard work. They were part of something. A network. People with power, influence. They kept the machine running. And when they tried to get out, he broke off, glancing over his shoulder as if someone might be listening. My stomach churned. My grandparents, my safe haven, the only ones who truly loved me, part of this? No. I wanted to deny it. But the names in the ledger glared back like scars that wouldn't fade. I flipped through the pages, my hands shaking. Wire transfers disguised as donations. Land deals that looked clean until you noticed the shell companies. Cash payments funneled offshore. At the back, a single page stood out. Unlike the rest, it wasn't numbers. It was a note, written in my grandmother's familiar, looping handwriting. If anything happens to us, protect her. She's the only one who can finish what we started. I froze. Ha! Me. Finish what they started? My voice cracked. What the hell does that mean? Victor shook his head. I don't know. But they didn't just leave you money, they left you responsibility. And now, everyone who's been feeding off this network thinks you're the threat. Before I could answer, glass shattered in the hallway. Both our heads whipped toward the sound. Heavy footsteps followed, deliberate, closing in. Victor's face went white. They found us. I shoved the ledger into my bag, adrenaline flooding my veins. Then we run. But as I grabbed his arm to pull him, Victor resisted. His eyes flicked to my bag. Wait. Give it to me. I can buy us time. They want the book, not you. I stared at him, my pulse screaming in my ears. In that moment, I couldn't tell, was Victor trying to save me or deliver me? The hallway groaned under heavy boots. Whoever was coming wasn't sneaking, they wanted us to know they were here. Victor's hand was still outstretched. Give me the ledger. Please. They'll kill us both if we don't hand it over. I tightened my grip on my bag. And what? You just happen to be the hero who delivers it. Before he could answer, the door burst inward with a thunderous crack. Two figures stormed in, faces hidden beneath black masks, bodies armored in tactical gear. Their movements were disciplined, professional. Not family squabbling over inheritance. Mercenaries. Move. Victor hissed, shoving me toward the window. Glass exploded as bullets shredded the wall behind us. I ducked, clutching the ledger, heart hammering. Victor grabbed a chair and hurled it at the intruders, buying us seconds. His face was wild with desperation, not for himself, but for me. Go. We scrambled into the hall, sprinting toward the back staircase. The thunder of boots followed, relentless. My legs screamed, my chest burned, but fear drove me faster than I'd ever run. At the bottom of the stairs, Victor yanked open the cellar door. This way. I hesitated. My gut screamed trap. But bullets sprayed the wall above my head, showering me with plaster. I had no choice. I dove into the cellar, the air damp and heavy, Victor right behind me. We tore through the dark, our footsteps echoing. Behind us, the intruders' voices barked in clipped commands. They were hunting us like prey. At the far end, a sliver of moonlight cut through a cracked foundation wall. Victor dropped to his knees, shoving aside the loose bricks. There's a crawl space, it leads to the woods. The gunfire drew closer. My mind raced. If I crawled in, I'd be trapped, vulnerable, one wrong move from death. But staying meant capture, or worse. Victor turned to me, his face streaked with sweat and dust, eyes fierce. Trust me, cousin. Please. For one heartbeat, the world narrowed to his gaze. His trembling hands. His pleading voice. And I realized this was the moment. Either I believed him, or I bet my life he was still theirs. Behind us, the cellar door blew off its hinges. I had seconds to choose. The cellar door slammed open, the beam of a flashlight cutting through the dust. Shouts echoed, sharp and commanding. Victor's hand was still outstretched toward the crawl space. Now or never. I shoved the ledger deeper into my bag and dropped to my knees. My palms scraped raw against the rough stone as I wriggled into the narrow passage. Cold earth pressed in on all sides, the air thick and suffocating. Victor slid in behind me, his breath hot and ragged on my heels. Bullets cracked against the cellar walls, dirt raining down onto my hair. The mercenaries were firing blindly into the crawl space, trying to pin us before we could vanish. Keep moving, Victor hissed. His hands pushed against my feet, urging me forward. Every inch felt endless. My chest tightened. What if he shoved me back into their arms? What if the second I reached daylight, he dragged me down and handed them the ledger? But there was no turning back. The crawl space finally spat us out into the night. The woods loomed ahead, dark and endless. Cool air hit my face like a shock. Run, Victor gasped, pulling me to my feet. Together we sprinted into the trees, branches clawing at our arms, the thunder of boots exploding behind us. We zigzagged through the undergrowth, my lungs burning, my legs threatening to give out. I could hear the mercenaries crashing through the forest, methodical, relentless. Then Victor veered sharply left, grabbing my wrist. This way. There's a creek, we can lose them in the water. I stumbled, nearly falling. My instinct screamed, he's leading you somewhere. Don't trust him. But the shouts were closing in. The beam of a flashlight cut through the trees, locking onto us. Victor yanked me harder. Trust me, damn it. Or we're both dead. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I heard something in his voice I hadn't before: desperation. Yes, but also something else. A raw, breaking edge that sounded an awful lot like truth. We burst through the tree line, the creek glimmering faintly under the moon. Without hesitation, Victor plunged into the water, dragging me with him. The icy current swallowed our noise, the rush of water masking our movements as we fought against its pull. Behind us, the searchlight swept past, voices barking orders. They hadn't seen where we'd gone. We crouched low in the freezing water, half submerged, gasping for air. Victor leaned close, whispering through chattering teeth. "They're not just after the ledger. They're after you. And if you don't figure out why soon, they'll never stop." The current dragged at us, pulling us downstream, away from the mercenaries. For now, we were alive. But my chest tightened around his words. Not just the ledger. Me. And I still didn't know if Victor was saving me, or delivering me straight into their hands. The creek carried us half a mile downstream before Victor dragged me onto the muddy bank. We collapsed on the wet earth, our breaths ragged, our bodies trembling from cold and fear. For a long time, all I could hear was the rush of water. No shouts. No boots. Just the night. I turned to Victor, my chest still heaving. "You keep saying they're after me. Not the ledger. Me. Why?" His face was pale in the moonlight, eyes darting like he was calculating whether to speak or to bury the truth. Finally, his shoulders sagged. "Because you're not just their heir. You're their insurance." My stomach twisted. What the hell does that mean? He looked away, his voice low, broken. Grandpa wasn't just part of the network. He ran it. He kept the secrets, kept everyone in line. But he knew he couldn't do it forever. So he made a deal. If anything happened to him, you'd inherit not just the money, but his leverage. That ledger is a kill switch. It protects you because if you die, they know it goes public. The earth tilted beneath me. My grandparents, the people who tucked me in at night, who told me fairy tales and kissed my scraped knees, the masterminds of a criminal empire? "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "You're lying. They wouldn't." Victor grabbed my shoulders, his eyes burning. "Why do you think they chose you, and not your father? Not me. Not anyone else. Because you're not just family, you're blood insurance. A name no one expected. A pawn they could hide in plain sight." My pulse hammered. "You're saying they used me?" He nodded grimly. "And now the network wants to make sure the pawn never learns to play." I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. My whole life suddenly felt like a lie. Every bedtime story, every hug, every whispered promise of one day you'll understand, twisted into something monstrous. Before I could speak, headlights cut through the trees. A black SUV rolled to a stop on the dirt path above the creek, its engine humming like a predator's growl. Doors opened. Shadows stepped out. Victor's grip tightened on my arm. His voice was hoarse, urgent. "If they take you now, it's over. You have to decide, cousin, run with me, or fight them alone." And in the glare of those headlights, with the truth of my blood still sinking in, I realized the most terrifying part wasn't the mercenaries coming for me. It was that I still didn't know if Victor was my ally, or the first wolf sent to lead me to slaughter. The SUV idled above us, headlights burning through the trees like two unblinking eyes. My wet clothes clung to me, heavy as chains, my breath shallow with dread. 3 figures stepped out. Dark suits. No hesitation in their movements. Predators. One of them spoke, his voice smooth, oily, like a man used to controlling rooms without raising his tone. "Miss Rivers. Your grandfather's favorite. We've been looking for you." My knees buckled at the sound of my name rolling off his tongue. They hadn't just found me, they'd known me. Watched me. Tracked me. Victor's hand hovered near the inside of his jacket, ready for a weapon. But the man in front didn't flinch. He smirked, as if Victor's threat amused him. "We don't want her hurt," the man said. "That was never the plan. We only want what belongs to us. The ledger. Hand it over, and she can go home tonight, untouched." My heart pounded. Home? There was no home left. Not after what I'd learned. Victor's jaw tightened. "You and I both know that's a lie. The man's smile widened. Then perhaps she'd prefer to hear it from her grandmother's lips. The back door of the SUV opened. And there she was. My grandmother. Bound. Blindfolded. But alive. My stomach dropped, heat rushing to my face. She was supposed to be dead. I'd mourned her. But here she was, breathing, trembling, a pawn in their cruel game. Trade, the man said simply. The ledger for her freedom. One life for another. Your choice, granddaughter. The night closed in around me. I could feel Victor's tension at my side, could hear the roar of my own pulse in my ears. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to run into her arms, but I froze. Because the way Victor gripped my arm, the way his breath caught, told me he hadn't expected this either. And that meant one of two things. Either my grandmother really was alive, trapped, another victim of this network. Or she was bait, sent willingly, to lure me into the very cage my grandparents had built. The man's voice sliced the silence again. 10 seconds, Miss Rivers. Decide. Ledger or blood. 10 seconds to choose between the family who raised me and the weapon that might destroy them. 10 seconds to decide whether Victor's trembling hand meant he was ready to save me. Or ready to betray me. 10 seconds, the man repeated, his tone like velvet wrapped around a blade. My grandmother's muffled sob carried across the clearing. My chest clenched so hard I thought my ribs would snap. She was alive, at least. She seemed alive, and I couldn't let her die in front of me. My hands shook as I pulled the leather bag tighter against my chest. The ledger inside felt heavier than a coffin. Victor's whisper sliced through the dark. Don't do it. That's not her, or if it is, she's already gone. This is a setup. 5 seconds, the man said. I stared at the blindfolded figure by the SUV. Frail. Familiar. The woman who had pressed peppermints into my hand during church, who had kissed my forehead every night and told me I was her miracle. Could it really all be lies? 3 seconds. My throat burned. My heart screamed. I stepped forward. Victor's grip tightened on my arm. Don't. You'll doom us both. 2. I tore free from his hand. My voice cracked, raw and desperate. Stop. I'll give it to you. The man's smirk deepened. Wise choice. I pulled the ledger from my bag, my fingers trembling. Every instinct told me this was wrong, that I was handing over more than ink and paper, I was handing them my future. But I couldn't watch her die. I hurled the ledger toward him. It landed in the dirt between us. The man's guards swooped in instantly, scooping it up. They didn't even glance at me. They didn't untie my grandmother. They didn't move her an inch. Instead, the man's voice dripped with amusement. You see, Miss Rivers, that's the problem with pawns. They mistake sacrifice for strategy. Before I could move, one of the guards yanked the blindfold from my grandmother's face. The world tilted. My stomach dropped. Because the woman standing there shaking, weeping, wasn't my grandmother. It was someone made to look like her. A mask. A perfect imitation. A sick laugh bubbled from the man's throat as the SUV door slammed shut. We never needed her. We only needed to know how far you'd go. Now we know. The engine roared to life. The SUV peeled away, the ledger gone. And I stood there, frozen, realizing I had just handed the only weapon I had to the very people who wanted me erased. Victor's face was pale with fury. Do you understand what you've done? You didn't just lose the ledger. You just declared war. And for the first time, I felt it in my bones. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was a game I'd already lost the first move in. And the next move would be checkmate. The SUV's taillights disappeared into the night, leaving only silence and the choking stench of exhaust. My body trembled, part from cold, part from the crushing weight of what I'd just done. I had lost the only leverage we had. Victor paced the creek bank like a caged animal, his hands buried in his wet hair. Do you even realize what was in that book? Do you have any idea what you just gave them? My voice cracked. Names. Numbers. Codes. I don't know. I never read it, not all of it. He spun on me, his face contorted in fury and fear. It wasn't just records. It was insurance. That ledger didn't just track the money, it named the heirs. Every hidden beneficiary, every bloodline tied to the network. Do you understand? Whoever controls that book controls the future of the empire. The words hit me like ice water. My stomach twisted. Heirs? I whispered. Victor nodded sharply, his voice low and guttural. And you weren't supposed to know this yet. But now you need to. You weren't just some convenient grandchild. You were written in. You were first. The ground swayed beneath me. First. He stepped closer, eyes burning. Do you get it now? You weren't just their insurance. You were their successor. The ledger doesn't just protect you, it crowns you. And now, the people who want the empire for themselves have the proof in their hands. My pulse hammered, my breath sharp and shallow. The world I thought I'd escaped by putting the estate into a trust had just folded back around me, a trap snapping shut. I stumbled back, clutching at my chest. No, I never wanted this. I didn't even know. Victor grabbed my wrist, forcing me to meet his eyes. His voice was hoarse but steady. It doesn't matter what you wanted. The second they opened that ledger, they saw your name. And now they'll never stop. Not until you're either in their throne. His grip tightened. Or in the ground. The forest pressed in, silent, watching. My mind reeled, spinning with one suffocating truth. I wasn't just a target. I was the prize. Victor's words echoed in my head, in their throne or in the ground. We trudged deeper into the woods, branches snapping underfoot, my pulse beating louder than the cicadas. I couldn't stop replaying his face in the moonlight. He hadn't looked angry anymore. He'd looked terrified. But was it for me or of me? We stumbled into the ruins of an old hunting cabin, its roof sagging, walls clawed by ivy. Victor pushed open the warped door, motioning me inside. We'll rest here. Just for a while. The air inside was stale, the floor littered with rotting papers, broken glass. My flashlight beam swept across the walls and froze. A family portrait. My breath caught. My grandparents stood stiff and proud, but it wasn't just them. There were others. Men and women in suits, their faces shadowed. And in the corner, faded, almost hidden, was me. Not me now. Me at 12 years old, smiling awkwardly, wearing the dress Grandma had bought for Easter. But I had no memory of this photograph being taken. None. My stomach twisted. Victor, what is this? He moved closer, his face unreadable. Proof. They've been grooming you longer than you realized. That cabin isn't random, it's one of their meeting places. You were never just the granddaughter. You were part of the circle before you even knew the circle existed. I staggered back. The ground seemed to shift beneath me. That's impossible. I'd remember. His eyes softened, almost pitying. Not if they didn't want you to. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. Then Victor stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper that scraped like glass. There's something else you need to know. That ledger you threw away. It didn't just name you as heir. It named me, too. The words slammed into me like a blow. My flashlight shook in my hand. What? Victor's gaze locked onto mine, steady, unreadable. We're not just cousins, Claire. We're competitors. Two bloodlines, tied to the same throne. And the network will never allow both of us to live. The room seemed to collapse around me, the walls pressing in. I couldn't tell if he was warning me or declaring war. And for the first time, as the silence thickened between us, I realized the truth might be worse than I feared. Because maybe Victor wasn't my savior. Maybe he wasn't my betrayer. Maybe he was both. The cabin air pressed down on me like a coffin lid. Victor's words echoed, "We're competitors." The storm outside rattled the rotten shutters, lightning carving jagged scars across his face. I couldn't tell if the look in his eyes was love, hatred, or both. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice was raw. He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing mine. "Because the second you knew, you'd have to choose. And you'd never choose me." A gunshot split the night. Wood splintered as a bullet tore through the cabin wall. The network had found us. Victor cursed, grabbing my arm. "We don't have time. Decide now, stand with me, or die with them." My heart thundered, my grandmother's portrait burning in my mind, the fake double still haunting me. My whole life had been their game. Their lies. Their crown waiting to crush me. And now the crown had two names. Mine. And Victor's. The door exploded inward. Men stormed in, weapons raised. Shouts filled the cabin. Victor pulled his gun. His eyes flicked to me, fierce and pleading. "Choose, Claire." Time slowed. My mind screamed. Trust him and risk betrayal. Turn on him and risk losing the only ally I had. The leader stepped forward, his smile snake-like. "Shoot him, Miss Rivers. End the bloodline. Take your throne." My hands shook. The gun felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Victor's chest rose and fell, his eyes locked on mine, not begging, not pleading, but daring. I pulled the trigger. The shot rang like thunder. Victor collapsed, but not from my bullet. The leader staggered back, a red bloom spreading across his chest. He dropped, eyes wide in shock. I hadn't aimed at Victor. I'd aimed at the throne itself. For a heartbeat, silence. Then chaos erupted. Guards lunged. Gunfire screamed. Smoke filled the cabin. When it cleared, bodies littered the floor. The SUV outside was already gone, carrying the ledger deeper into darkness. Victor was still alive, his face pale, blood on his sleeve. He stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "You didn't choose them," he rasped. "You didn't choose me. You chose yourself." I swallowed hard, the gun trembling in my hand. My chest heaved with fire and fury. "No," I whispered, stepping past him, into the storm. "I chose war." Lightning split the sky as I vanished into the night, the heir without a ledger, the queen without a crown. And the most dangerous piece still left on the board.